you doing? Bob Brown again. A little chilly in my shop today, put a coat on. Anyway, there's a thread on Facebook where someone said, what makes John Brzenk so good? And people were replying, whatever they replied, and I simply replied, genetics and work. It's that simple. Well, I guess it's not that simple. So, if you want to be great at something, in my opinion, work can outdo genetics alone, okay? If you want to be the best, it's like the greatest ever, in my opinion, you're definitely going to have great genetics, and then you're definitely going to have to put in a lot of work in order to achieve the greatest of all time. Michael Jordan, great genetics, known for his unbelievable work ethic. But to just simply be great, if you've got unbelievable genetics, you don't necessarily have to put in as much work. If you've got mediocre genetics, you're going to put in more work. If you have lousy genetics, you're going to have to put in an unbelievable amount of work. So on to my opinion of John Brzenk. John Brzenk has extremely good genetics. The reason I offer that truth is his father had good genetics. His father was very strong. His brother was very strong. If you simply really take a close look at John's structure, his brother's structure, his father's structure, they're very thick boned, thick wrists, thick ankles. Their hands are thick. I've lifted weights with John in the gym, and without hardly ever bench pressing at all, he got on a bench press and just started benching pretty good. And so that's why I say John has great genetics. And then as far as his work ethic, of course, everyone always hears John say, all I do is table time. I arm wrestle once a week and that's it. Well, that may be true once he reached an unbelievably high, echelon in the sport. But I can tell you John and I have sat around and had coffee and had a couple beers and talked forever, over 20 plus years. He used to live and train with Dave Patton back on the East Coast, where they arm wrestled every single day, hours on end, at a young age, to where you could recuperate, better. Was it the best training? I would say no. But my point is he arm wrestled a ton. And then as he got older, he realized that if he took a little more time off in between each practice, he'd have more time to fully recuperate. So, is arm wrestling once a week the best way to get strong? In my opinion, no. In my opinion, Brzenk himself could have been even stronger than he was. Someone had mentioned that, if he was born in 1990, the gap would be much closer. Well, I agree with that. The gap would be closer. But if John was born in 1990 and grew up now, he would have all the training methodologies that have been learned today versus when he was born in the early 60s. So I honestly think that if John would have trained differently, he could have even been stronger, is what's really crazy in my opinion, So as far as genetics and work ethic go, his work ethic was unbelievable. It was just regimented, He'd come to practice, he arm wrestled a particular way, he trained a particular way. He used practice as a method to get strong. I can remember a conversation him and Todd Hutchins had, and I may have talked about this before. Todd was preaching you get strong in the gym. John is preaching you got to get strong on the table. But if you really listen to the conversation, the methodology was the same. John would hit 1 rep maximums, or I should say, he would hit max efforts. He would just do it with a human arm, where Todd hits max efforts and speed days and things like that in a gym. John would just ended up using it on an arm. And then it would, the older you get, trust me, the older you get, the longer it takes you to recuperate from anything. And the true course to strength and power is just your adaptation to whatever resistance you put it through. For example, lift as hard. I don't pick a movement. Go as hard as you can possibly go, and do it in multitude of fashions. Do it with just one single rep, or do it with 20 reps, but go to absolute failure, and then let your body recover. Now, the big question for everyone is, how long does that take? Well, if you keep your training logs, you'll know how long that takes. Trying to speed up training. We're all trying to speed up training. But with John Brzenk, he would go once a week to practice. The older he got, it was like once every 2 weeks. Because let's face it, arm wrestling, practice, it's the funnest part of our sport. So what do we do when we get to practice? We go way too hard than we really should be going. You don't ever see a bench presser go into the gym and do his max effort 50 times, 100 times. But at a practice, especially if you're the guy that gets taken down, that's exactly what you're doing. It's crazy, but it's the funnest part of the sport. As far as John goes, unbelievable genetics, proven by his whole family, an unbelievable work ethic, just a little different than what the rest of us may or may not do. And his work ethic was good enough to get him to where he is. Now imagine, in my opinion again, if he would have trained a little differently, how much more strong he could have been. Ask questions. Thanks.